At the core of philosophy, one of the oldest and most profound questions has been, what is real? From ancient thinkers like Plato to modern philosophers like Kant and Nietzsche, the concept of reality has been deeply explored, each philosopher giving their unique take on what constitutes existence. But before we dive into their ideas, let's step back and consider this. Is the world we see with our eyes the true reality, or is it simply a projection of our mind? The first known exploration of this idea comes from Plato. In his famous allegory of the cave, Plato imagines prisoners who have been chained in a dark cave their whole lives, forced to look at shadows on a wall. These shadows are the only reality they know, as they've never seen the outside world. But one day, one of the prisoners escapes and is blinded by the sunlight. As his eyes adjust, he begins to see the true world around him. Plato uses this to show that we, too, might be trapped in a similar way, by our limited perceptions. Could our understanding of reality be limited to the shadows on the wall? Fast forward to the 20th century, and you find that philosophers like René Descartes and Immanuel Kant have posed similar questions. Descartes, in his famous statement, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, argued that the only thing we can be sure of is our own existence. For Descartes, reality itself could be a trick, something that could be manipulated by an evil demon. In contrast, Immanuel Kant suggested that while we can never truly know the things in themselves, we can only understand the world as it appears to us, shaped by our senses and mental faculties. These perspectives lead to a key insight. Reality is not just something that exists out there. It is something that we actively engage with, shaped by our minds, our senses, and even our language. How can we ever be sure of what is truly real if we are so deeply embedded in our own perspectives? However, the idea of reality isn't just about perception. Some philosophers, particularly the existentialists, argued that our very existence is a kind of void, a space filled with meaninglessness. Jean-Paul Sartre, one of the foremost existentialists, famously claimed that existence precedes essence. In other words, we are not born with an inherent purpose or meaning. We create it ourselves. The world is a blank canvas, and it is up to us to give it meaning through our actions, our choices, and our relationships. This brings us to another key concept in philosophy: freedom. Sartre's existentialism is built upon the idea that we are radically free to make choices that define who we are. But with this freedom comes responsibility. We are responsible for our actions, for the meaning we create in our lives, and for the way we interact with the world. This freedom, Sartre argues, is both empowering and burdensome. But how do we reconcile the freedom that Sartre speaks of with the structure of our world? How do we understand the role of society, culture, and history in shaping who we are? These are questions that some of the greatest minds in philosophy have grappled with, including the famous philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche's ideas about freedom were revolutionary. He argued that traditional values, like those found in religion or morality, had become shackles for humanity. In his work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche introduces the idea of the Übermensch, or overman, a figure who has transcended societal norms and created his own values. The Übermensch is a symbol of human potential, someone who embraces the fullness of their freedom, unbound by traditional constraints. But Nietzsche also recognized the dangers of unbridled freedom. Without meaning, without structure, life can feel like a constant struggle. This brings us to Nietzsche's concept of the eternal recurrence. The idea that life might repeat itself over and over, infinitely. If you knew your life would be repeated forever, how would you live differently? Would you embrace every moment, or would you try to avoid the inevitable? Nietzsche challenges us to consider whether we would find meaning in such a life. So, what does it all mean? If reality is shaped by our perceptions and freedom gives us the power to shape our own lives, does it follow that meaning is entirely subjective? Are we simply left to create our own sense of reality from nothing? These ideas might sound intimidating, but they also point to a deep truth. The search for meaning is not about finding easy answers. It's about engaging with the complexities of our existence, questioning everything we think we know, and embracing the uncertainty of life. By doing so, we discover a deeper understanding of ourselves, of our relationships, and of the world we live in. Now that we've explored the nature of reality and our perceptions, let's shift gears and consider a different but equally important question. What does it mean to live a good life? For centuries, philosophers have debated what constitutes a good life. Is it about acquiring wealth and power? Is it about seeking pleasure and avoiding pain? Or is there something more profound that makes life truly worthwhile? Aristotle, one of the greatest philosophers in Western history, provides a compelling answer. In his work, Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle argues that the key to a good life is the pursuit of eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or well-being. For Aristotle, eudaimonia is achieved by living in accordance with reason and virtue. It's not about pleasure for pleasure's sake, but about living a life that is guided by wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Aristotle's concept of virtue is essential to his view of the good life. He believed that living virtuously requires a balance between extremes. For example, courage is the balance between cowardice and recklessness, while generosity is the balance between stinginess and extravagance. It is through practicing these virtues that we develop a well-rounded, fulfilling life. But Aristotle's vision of the good life wasn't just about individual virtue. He also emphasized the importance of community. For Aristotle, humans are social animals, and we cannot achieve true flourishing in isolation. We need relationships, friendships, and a society that encourages the development of virtue. In this way, Aristotle's ethics offers a vision of the good life that is both individual and communal. However, not all philosophers agree with Aristotle's view. For example, the hedonists, like Epicurus, argue that the pursuit of pleasure is the ultimate goal of life. Epicurus believed that by minimizing pain and maximizing pleasure, we could achieve happiness. Yet, this view was not about indulgence in excess, but about finding simple pleasures in life, such as friendship, contemplation, and the absence of fear. In contrast to hedonism, many modern philosophers have emphasized the importance of meaning and purpose over pleasure. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote profoundly about the pursuit of meaning in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl argued that even in the most dire circumstances, such as suffering in a concentration camp, humans can find meaning through their experiences. This meaning, Frankl believed, is essential for psychological well-being and a fulfilling life. Frankl's ideas lead us to an important conclusion. The good life is not just about pleasure or happiness, but about finding meaning in whatever we do, even in hardship. It's about engaging with life in a way that brings us closer to our deepest values and aspirations. And it is through this engagement that we come to understand what it truly means to live well.